Hello, my name is Xiao from the Institute for Future Technologies at the Polytechnique de Vinci in Paris, and I will be presenting my paper, Performative Vocal Synthesis for Foreign Language Intonation Practice, which is work done in collaboration with colleagues at Sorbonne Nouvelle and Sorbonne Université. When we think about learning foreign language pronunciation, we often focus on the pronunciation of individual sounds, and systems for computer-aided pronunciation training also has this focus. But in pronunciation, there's also something called intonation, which is the pattern of pitch change across words or longer phrases, which gives each language its own sort of music. So intonation is less emphasized in pronunciation than individual syllables, but it's very important for both the expression of emotions and affect as well as intelligibility. Teachers have come up with ways of teaching intonation using the visual and gestural modalities to draw attention to pitch changes. And in our approach, we were interested in using an interaction paradigm called performative vocal synthesis, or real-time vocal synthesis controlled by hand gestures, as a way to give learners a prosthetic voice. So PVS was originally developed as new musical instruments to control singing synthesis, and with theremin also. And we think that so having this pre-recorded phrase that you can then change with your gestures with the help of a visual guide can be a way to help learners practice intonation. And so our goal in this research is to determine the feasibility of using this paradigm. And our research questions had to do with to what extent can non-native subjects produce categorical contrasts in English intonation with their voice and with gestures, as well as how vocal and gestural productions differ for non-native subjects and how productions differ across native and non-native subjects. To do this research, we developed a mobile app for practicing foreign language intonation called Geppetto, and here are some main interaction techniques. So first, we can listen to a reference and
Nick doesn't listen to anyone.
Do an imitation of it with our gestures. And we can follow a visual guide. We can also record and play back the gesture.
Nick doesn't listen to anyone.
But we're not limited to just following the guide. We can also experiment with different productions.
Nick doesn't listen to anyone.
So the main part of the system is this teal region where the x-axis controls the phonemic content, the y-axis controls the pitch, and the timing is controlled by the speed of your movement. And you can use both your finger or a stylus on this mobile app that we have running on the iPad. So I had mentioned that our study focused on English intonation, and just to give you an overview of how English intonation is analyzed, according to the British school pioneered by Alan Cruttenden, we can actually categorize the melody of English into 4 different tones. So there's the fall, there's the rise, and in particular there's the fall-rise tone, which is quite tricky for non-native speakers because it's often used to express uncertainty, something that's not said, and oftentimes quite the opposite of what the literal words say. And this is especially difficult for native French speakers. So we came up with a whole corpus of these phrases, and for each of these phrases, we made a little drawing and had a text-based hint to express the meaning. And so one is the straightforward meaning pronounced with the fall intonation, and the other, the fall rise, is the one that means something else than what is actually said. And we recruited 12 native subjects and 12 non-native subjects. The 12 non-natives were French subjects residing in Paris. And we had all the subjects do 3 tasks. So first, they had to read each phrase based on the meaning prompted by the drawing and the text-based hint. And then they had to imitate a rather exaggerated version of each phrase, first with their voice, and then afterwards with their gestures using the Geppetto interface. And it was up to the subjects to decide when they were satisfied with each recording, so they could listen back to their recording and redo it if they wanted. And for the gestural condition, they had some familiarization trials, and they were also informed that it's really important to listen, and it's not just about blindly following the visual guide, but both the shape and the speed of the gesture are important. So for analysis, we did an acoustic and a perceptual analysis. The acoustic analysis focused on the phrase endings which carry the tone, and we used general additive mix models, which allows us to model dynamically varying data over time. And we can also extract the significance of the models, both overall as well as the regions and the amount of significant difference. So for the questions that we're interested in, we modeled tooth smooths, as you can see in this picture, based on a difference in parameter. I'm just going to focus on the first question for the sake of time. So we're looking at whether there's significant differences between the fall and the fall rise curves. And so we made 6 models by separating the subjects and the conditions, the data for each subject in each condition. And here are the smooth plots from the models. And so we can see here that we get quite clearly the different fall and the fall rise curves in the model, except for the non-native free reading condition. And also for the non-native vocal imitation, we find that the region and the amount of significant difference is quite smaller than the same vocal imitation for natives, but that gestural imitation enables the natives or the non-natives to perform more similarly to the natives, which says that, so on the one hand, the non-natives don't really know how to spontaneously produce the fall rise tone, which means that they don't really have an association between the pitch shape and the meaning. And they have trouble fully vocally replicating the exaggerated fall rise production, in contrast to native speakers, which have a strong association between the meaning and the shape, and they can both make more subtle pronunciations and more easily vocally imitate exaggerated productions. But the good news is that gesture enables non-natives to produce more exaggerated fall rise intonations closer to what the natives are able to do. So we also did a perceptual analysis with 5 raters, teachers of English phonetics, considered experts in intonation. They listened to all the stimuli from all subjects and conditions and had to select which meaning that they heard. We can see from the graph of counts that non-native free reading intended to be fall rise had the most interpretations by the judges as the opposite of what it was. But what's more interesting is if we look at the differences in F0 contours based on whether the majority of judges heard it as the fall rise meaning, we see that we can extract actually the 2 shapes of the curves just based on judges' perception alone, which says that the shape of the tone is associated perceptually with its meaning, and that more exaggerated fall rise intonations result in higher rates of perceptual identification. So just a final note, some people might be wondering, so how do you know that the native speakers, or non-native speakers, weren't just mindlessly following the visual guide? Actually, they can't, because both the shape and the speed are important, and it's actually quite tricky to just draw a shape without controlling the speed. And of course, you are right that we can't isolate the effect of the gestural control or the visual guide, but actually, I would argue here that the visual guide helps the non-natives by giving them a ballpark hint, but in the end, they have to still find the shape themselves. And so, in conclusion, this study showed that performative vocal synthesis enables non-native speakers to produce unfamiliar intonations beyond the limitations of their natural voice. We're interested in doing a longitudinal study as a next step to see how much it actually helps people learn. But also, I hope that this presentation can help you be more inspired about thinking about intonation in pronunciation training.